knew the tales of the experiments were true.
Okay, for the record, we don't love to be called experiments, just moving forward.
No, I imagine your people treated you unkindly.
I've worked through it.
But you deserve better. All Inhumans do something better elsewhere.
Where are my friends? May, Coulson.
You mustn't worry about that. They are your past. I am your future.
So the next questions on my list are questions about Kasius Jr., Faulnak, and Sinara, villains of Season 6, Gravitonium and Graviton, the chances that Graviton is still alive in space. You've also got the question about S.W.O.R.D, whether or not we're going to see S.W.O.R.D on Season 6, whether Season 6 is going to be a setup for S.W.O.R.D, and if not, can we see S.W.O.R.D on future seasons? Now, over the course of this video, I'm going to be answering these few questions, and maybe a little bit more. I'm going to be talking about the Confederacy, I'm going to be talking about Kasius Sr., Kasius Jr., Faulnak, and Sinara. So, without further ado, welcome back guys, and let's go. So number 1, is Graviton still alive? Now when you do look at the series and the fact that Season 5 was going to be the final season of it, you could consider that they wanted to kill Graviton. So pretty much Daisy quaking Talbot's sorry ass into space was all about killing him, and we would assume that he's frozen in space, that he is dead in space. But Season 5 was not really the final season of the series, and Graviton is not the easy villain to kill or get rid of. Graviton is a villain that kept coming back in the comics every single time he was defeated or presumed dead. And when it comes to Graviton's abilities in the comics, the guy could definitely breathe in space. Now when analyzing the situation on the series in comparison to the comics, you've got Talbot stating that he needs to take the ship from space and going to Earth in order to be able to breathe. Now while originally the statement does sound like a done deal, like a statement of fact, it might as well not be that. So when you think about it, there is the possibility that Talbot was just assuming. I mean, these powers did get to the man's head, but he's no moron, and he's no idiot, and he's no scientist as well. So if there was a property within Gravitonium that would give him the ability to breathe within space, he does not know about it. So he's pretty much assuming, based on general knowledge, human beings cannot breathe in space. So once again, if Season 5 were to be the final season of the series, I would have told you that Talbot is dead, Graviton is dead. They wanted to tie all loose ends, and that is exactly what they did with him being shot out in space. But because Season 5 wasn't the final season, because the series has been renewed for a Season 6, I would tell you that there is this minor possibility that he is still alive, that they might end up facing off with him. The fact that Team S.H.I.E.L.D. is heading into space as of this moment, as of the end of the season, does as well add a lot to this possibility. Now to add fuel to this fire, in an interview with Entertainment Weekly, Jed Whedon did state, "This is Marvel and even more its agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I know we see him floating in space, but he's Graviton, so you never know. Chances are he might not be super dead." But number 2, what other ways are there to bring back Graviton, even if he were to be dead floating in space? What other ways are there? Now there is the Confederacy way, you can also call it the Kree way or the Kasius Jr. way, because we did see the guy revive Yo-Yo over and over again over the course of her not so good life in the lighthouse in that post-apocalyptic future. But even if they did not use that method on Talbot or Gravitalbot, they might still do number 3, extract or drain Talbot out of that Gravitonium and use it for their own purposes, which does make Papa Kasius the villain of Season 6, or one of the villains of Season 6. Now for one thing, casting an actor like Craig Parker does not make any kind of sense unless you plan on using him extensively if you do get a 6th season. The momentary and minor villain of Season 5 was only seen in a very limited capacity over the course of 2 episodes. We also know, based on his conversation with Daisy on episode 21, that he wasn't really on the same ship with Kovas, so whatever happened to Kovas, whatever fate that Kovas met, which we would assume is death based on the poster released prior to the airing of episode 21, Taryan did not really meet. Besides that, even if some were to argue that he was dead, that he was gone for good, that does not make any kind of sense because we do know that Taryan is alive in the future based on the conversation that goes down between Kasius and other Kree and other aliens within the lighthouse, including his brother Faulnak. And at that point, when May and Deke made it out of that ship, that alien ship, at that point where they targeted it with its own missiles, they haven't changed the future yet. So yeah, Taryan is still alive, and I think that Taryan is going to come back on the next season, and I think that Taryan is going to be one of the villains of next season. And it is pretty exciting to make that assumption. It is pretty exciting to know that Craig Parker is going to be back on the show next season, or there is a possibility that he would be back on the show next season. I mean, I've raved about the actor for so long after I knew of his casting on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but nonetheless, I cannot stop raving about him. The actor is just amazing. Give him the floor, give him room to become a full-on villain on the series, and he's just gonna rock the shit out of it. But once again, and before I move on, knowing that the team is heading into space as of the end of Season 5, there is definitely a good chance that Taryan would be a villain on Season 6. But moving on to number 4, if Taryan were to make it on Season 6, what are the chances that we get to see a younger version of Kasius Jr., Sinara, and Faulnak? Now, I would personally think it would be very high. It would all, though, depend on our definition of younger, the word younger. The thing is, I've been trying to squeeze my mind for the past few days trying to think of whether or not I've ever read anything about the lifespan of Kree. I've also been trying to squeeze my mind trying to figure out if we've ever heard something about that kind of fact over the course of so many movies and so many TV series when it comes to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And the thing is, I don't really think that's ever been brought up, so the question over here is, what is younger when it comes to Kasius, Sinara, and Faulnak? Could they just be cast as the very same actors we got to see on Season 5, or do we have to see a younger version, an actual younger version, a child Kasius, a child Faulnak, and a child Sinara? After all, when you think about it, Kasius does look pretty young in 2091, and so does Faulnak, and so does Sinara, and they've been alive during the events of 2018, based on what Taryan tells Talbot and what he tells Daisy later on, or the conversation that happens between him and Daisy. That's like 73 Earth years, even though we do not know how many years have passed for the Kree in that situation, so we cannot really negate the idea that they might look in 2018 like they're grown-ass men and women. And that, in my opinion, would definitely be an added bonus. I would like to see what damaged Kasius Jr. so much, what made him this person in the future, what did his father do to him in order to make him this hateful person. I mean, his father is already cunning and hateful himself, but the kid has a lot of damage, a lot of daddy issues. But moving on and away from the Kasius family, Kasius Jr., Kasius Sr., Sinara, and Faulnak, let's talk some number 5. So the looming question of S.W.O.R D. S.W.O.R D has been a major question mark since the end of Season 4 and the beginning of Season 5. Before we got to Season 5, we were talking S.W.O.R D. Are we gonna get S.W.O.R D? Are we not gonna get S.W.O.R D on Season 5? And the thing about S.W.O.R D is, it's been hinted at the very beginning. There was a S.W.O.R D Easter egg at the very beginning of the season.
So wait, S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't have a space division called S.P.E.A.R or something? Really? I always thought you guys had people hiding on the moon.
Now, as you did see over here, the reference was to S.P.E.A.R rather than to S.W.O.R D, but it was all about an agency similar to S.H.I.E.L.D. or a division of S.H.I.E.L.D. that deals with intergalactic stuff, with space stuff. Now, of course, they couldn't reference S.W.O.R D because S.W.O.R D is still owned by Fox. By the time Season 6 hits, S.W.O.R D might actually be owned by Disney. I'm gonna circle back to S.P.E.A.R itself because that was one clever hidden double reference, a reference to both S.W.O.R D and to Infinity War. Gonna be talking about that in a moment here because I just realized that second reference existed. But let me first get done with the S.W.O.R D reference over here. So S.W.O.R D is pretty much that division of S.H.I.E.L.D. that deals with intergalactic stuff, with space-related stuff, and pretty much S.W.O.R D does not exist in the MCU because S.W.O.R D is owned by Fox. With all the ownership issues, referencing S.W.O.R D was going to be rather difficult, so they made a play on that and used S.P.E.A.R. And S.P.E.A.R is very similar to S.W.O.R D in terms of the fact that they are both weapons that are used in a very similar manner. And if the Fox deal goes through, and hopefully it is going to go through before June or July of 2018, we're going to have the chance of S.H.I.E.L.D. introducing S.W.O.R D on Season 6. And let me remind you, they are heading into space as of the end of Season 5. Can't believe I'm using this argument for almost every single point on this video, but nonetheless, they are in fact heading into space as of the end of Season 5. And if you thought they were facing space-related stuff on Season 5, that was not really true, because we ended up realizing that they were not really in space, but rather in the lighthouse, which is pretty much attached to Earth. But they are actually and currently heading into space, which means they're going to be dealing with space-related threats. And because of that, they might actually end up establishing S.W.O.R D by the end of the season as some sort of a spin-off or a total replacement for Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And I am definitely hoping it is the former rather than the latter. But finally though, circling back to S.P.E.A.R in the comics and number 6. Now S.P.E.A.R in the comics is a Chinese intelligence agency very similar to S.H.I.E.L.D. So let's see what happened there. So first of all, we had the Dynasty team-up, the Chinese superhero team-up. Dynasty ended up fighting against Thanos' forces when he invaded Earth. During said battle though, they lost a couple of their soldiers and the team ended up disbanding after Thanos was gone. And as a product of all of that, as a product of the invasion, as a product of the losses that were incurred during the invasion, S.P.E.A.R was formed. S.P.E.A.R was formed to combat the kind of threats akin to the invasion by Thanos. So yeah, that's such a clever variation on S.H.I.E.L.D. and it does open room for new organizations to make an appearance on S.H.I.E.L.D. as well. Speaking of S.P.E.A.R in general, they do have equipment that is very comparable to S.H.I.E.L.D's equipment, very advanced equipment. Their weapons as well are of similar quality, so I could see even a spin-off for S.P.E.A.R on TV, or at the very least see S.P.E.A.R on the series at some point, maybe cooperating with S.H.I.E.L.D. on some mission or the other. But that being said though, I think my work here is done when it comes to S.W.O.R D, S.P.E.A.R, the Confederacy, Kasius, Kasius Jr., Sinara, Faulnak, and Graviton. So let me know in the comments what you thought of these ideas. Do you think that Talbot should return to the fold of the series on season 6? Do you think that he will? Do you think he'll be associated with the Kasius family? Do you think we'll see the younger Kasius and his brother and maybe Sinara on season 6? Do you believe this might end up setting up for S.W.O.R D and maybe we would get a spin-off for S.W.O.R D or maybe even S.P.E.A.R? Now you can let me know as well if you did like this video by dropping it a much appreciated like, and if that were to be the case, you could always subscribe and enable notifications for my future videos, community posts, and live streams. And until next time, thank you all for tuning in and have a great day.